Hi guys, welcome back to my channel as we go through the Law of One material lessons, and we're on lesson 2, and we are going to go through the 3 distortions from the Law of One. And basically that means going back to the very beginning of everything and what was the first thing that ever happened? What was the first thing that was created? What was the first thing of everything? And a lot of people want to say the first thing that was created was darkness. In the beginning there was darkness, and I'm like, well, no, that didn't happen for a long time, because how would you know what darkness was? You wouldn't. You don't know what light is yet, so how would you know what darkness is? So we need to go to what was the first distortion, what happened before all of that. So first let's hear a sequence from Ra himself and what he gave in one of the sessions. So here we go.
The first distortion, free will, finds focus. This is the second distortion known to you as logos, the creative principle, or love. This intelligent energy thus creates a distortion known as light. From these 3 distortions come many, many hierarchies of distortions, each having its own paradoxes to be synthesized, no one being more important than another. Love light is the enabler, the power, the energy giver. Light love is the manifestation which occurs when light has been impressed with love.
Okay, so Ross says the first distortion was free will. So if you think of source consciousness, when it first began, it was a simple awareness and it didn't have a place. It was like a sphere. A sphere doesn't have a beginning or an end. It doesn't have a one point of reference. It's all encompassing. So when Ross says that the first distortion was free will, it's like a consciousness that is simply blank and aware, but it doesn't know anything because it hasn't experienced anything yet. And the first distortion of free will caused that awareness to expand. So it was aware of all aspects of itself as it expanded, and it was the distortion of the free will to expand, and it started to know itself just that much. And in its expansion, it starts to have a frequency, a vibration from the awareness of all sides as it kind of oscillates and knows itself that much. Now, when you think of things coming together and being pulled apart, when you come back together after being pulled apart, in that oscillation is the feeling of love. Just like when you run towards something that you love, you run into the arms of a lover, or your kids run towards you to run up and give you a hug. It's a feeling of love to come together. So after that first distortion of free will and the expansion and the frequencies that were created with awareness, when you come together like that, it can only be described of love. And so that was the second distortion. And through love, of that coming together, that focus, that awareness of feeling love in that oscillation, the third distortion was light. The very first particle of light was created through love. And throughout this series of lessons of the Law of One, you're going to know that consciousness is not just thoughts. Thoughts are things. Thoughts create. A thought can create something out of absolutely nothing. And light was the first logos, and it was created through love. And everything from there, from a logos to a sub-logos to a sub-sub-logos, is that once you can create just one particle of light through thought, through the feeling of love, you can create anything. You can create not just more light, you can create universes. There is no end, and that's where intelligent infinity comes. It's the intelligence of thought that creates. And there's no fourth or fifth or sixth distortion because it becomes infinite at that point. And also, when we're talking about source energy and the infinite creator, you have to remember that when that first light was created, the consciousness went into the light itself, kind of like inside the light, looking out at the consciousness that created it. And this was all happening simultaneously, and it was given perspective. So not only do thoughts create, does consciousness create, but source consciousness itself experiences that creation. So you hear Ra talk about love light and light love. And that's the same as teach, learn, and then learn, teach. That's Ra trying to explain how source consciousness expands to know itself better. The same way when you learn something, after learning it, you can then teach it. Just like after you create something, you can then experience what you have created. So, just to recap, the first distortion was free will, and it was the free will that allowed it to expand its consciousness. And the second distortion was love, the feeling of love within that expansion. And it was the love that was the creative principle that created light. And those are the first three distortions of source energy itself. And Ra will go into more detail in some other sessions as we start to get into defining the densities and how all the densities were created and how the expansion of the universe in an effort to know itself folds into the next octave. You hear a lot about, well, what about 12th and 13th and 14th density? Let me try to kind of break this down. The 8th density turns into density 1 again. It folds into the next octave, kind of like the notes on a keyboard. You know, once you hit 7, the 8th is the beginning of 1 again. So you know how you have like a family tree and you're the trunk and it splits into 2, and those are your parents, and then those 2 branches split into 4, and those are your grandparents, and so on, up and up. For the universe, for source energy, the way it expands, that trunk doesn't have 2 branches, it has 7, and each one of those branches now turns into 7 branches, and so on. So the universe is expanding so exponentially that it turns to infinity. It's simply about the expansion of the universe to experience, to create, to know itself by experiencing what it creates. And as we go through these lessons, that's going to become like really clear to you, and I hope you guys love it just as much as I do. So I'm going to leave this lesson here. It's a bit of a short lesson, but immensely important one. And the next lesson, we're going to get into each of the densities. Thank you guys for listening. Be sure to like, share, and subscribe as we move through this Law of One material, and I will see you in the next video.